In Uruguay, the government implements alternative measures to face the worsening water crisis. In the United States, authorities recorded the 336th mass shooting this year, leaving at least 2 people dead and 28 injured. And in France, more than 700 people were arrested on the 5th consecutive night of large protests against violence following the killing of a 17-year-old teenager by a police officer. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The first plane arriving from Russia following the resumption of direct flights landed in Cuba. The first flight landed on Saturday in the Cuban resort of Varadero, officially marking the resumption of direct air travel between both countries, suspended in 2022. The aircraft is a Boeing 777 with room for 457 passengers, covering the distance between Moscow and the Cuban resort of Varadero in about 13 hours. The flights will be made twice a week on Thursdays and Saturdays, and from September the program will be extended to 3 flights a week. On Sunday, the Honduran government ordered to resume custody of the national penitentiary system through the military police of public order. The commander of the military police said in a preliminary report that they took control of the 25 Honduran prisons by instructions of President Xiomara Castro. The official added that as of July 1st, the administration and control of the prisons will pass into the hands of the military institute for a period of 1 year due to the battles between rival gangs that have caused numerous deaths. As part of the operation, all the directors and deputy directors of the prisons were replaced by military commanders. In this context, during the first inspections of both male and female prisons, arsenals of rifles, pistols and grenades have been found, as well as drugs and other unpermitted objects. Colombian Vice President Francia Márquez was sworn in as Minister of Equality on Friday at a ceremony in the northern city of Manaure. The ceremony was presided over by Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who pointed out that the new ministry would focus its efforts on guaranteeing the right to equality and the elimination of discrimination, with particular attention to marginalized and excluded peoples, communities, and territories. The new portfolio will have a budget of approximately $120 million and will be responsible for 5 deputy ministries: youth, women, ethnic peoples and farmers, excluded territories, and diversity.
Dr. Francia Elena Márquez Mina, do you swear by God and the homeland to faithfully and loyally fulfill the duties entrusted to you by the Constitution and the law to which you have been appointed?
Sí, juro.
Yes,
Juro ante
I
Dios.
do. I swear before God, but I
También
also
juro
swear
ante
before my
mis ancestros y
ancestors to work with
ancestras,
dignity, with
trabajar
love,
con
with
dignidad,
loyalty, with transparency, and with
con
commitment
amor,
for equality and
con
equity in this
lealtad,
country.
con transparencia.
Si así lo
If you
hiciereis,
do so, may
que
God
Dios
and
y
the
la
homeland
patria os lo
reward you,
premien,
and if not,
si no,
may he
él
and she
y
require you
ella
to do
os
so.
lo demanden.
Brazilians in Rio de Janeiro celebrated a court ruling barring former President Jair Bolsonaro from public office for 8 years. Bolsonaro was tried by the highest electoral court over claims he made in a televised meeting with foreign diplomats in July 2022 that the electronic voting machines in use since 1996 compromised election transparency. He gave no proof for the claims he made just 3 months ahead of his election defeat to Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. Prosecutors say Bolsonaro's accusations contributed to a violent invasion of the presidential palace, Congress, and Supreme Court in January by supporters angry about his electoral loss. In a verdict that stretched over several days, 5 of the 7 judges of the highest electoral court in Brasilia found Bolsonaro guilty for abuses of power, barring him from public office for 8 years. The Humahuaca City Council approved early Saturday morning a declaration rejecting the reform of the Constitution of Jujuy, while local residents who were protesting in the vicinity of the meeting hall were repressed by local security forces with rubber bullets. According to local media, while the councillors were reading what was approved inside the building, the security forces made a repressive advance on the demonstrators who demanded the approval of the declaration. Demonstrators also demanded the resignation of Mayor Karina Paniagua, who supported the constitutional reform. Families in Humahuaca report that there were between 3 and 6 wounded with bullets in the neck, thorax, and eyes who were treated at the local hospital. The number of detainees could not yet be corroborated. Opponents to the constitution reform claim it limits the right to protest in the northern province and contains language that indigenous groups say will hinder them in the land rights disputes. In Uruguay, the government moves forward with the construction of a provincial dam to hold back the waters of the San Jose River, given the worsening of the water crisis. Specialists warn in recent weeks that the level of the San Severino Dam, which supplies more than half the country, is at a critical point of approximately 2% of its capacity, adding that in this scenario the remaining water becomes unfit for human consumption. In view of the situation, the authorities announced measures such as the distribution of bottled water and the construction of a provincial dam in the San Jose River. A less attractive option for the authorities is to increase the proportion of brackish water coming from the La Plata River. In China, heavy rains brought havoc in several areas of Hunan province. The rains caused extensive flooding of streets, residential buildings, and agricultural facilities. Local authorities quickly issued severe water warnings and deployed emergency rescue forces to address the situation. The urban area and surrounding townships in Baojin County Prefecture were especially hard hit by heavy downpours, and more than 1,000 people in the 12 townships were evacuated from their homes. The relentless rain caused great damage to crops, households, and stores, stranding many residents. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the South. In the United States, authorities recorded early Sunday morning the 336th mass shooting in just 6 months. At least 2 people died and 28 were injured, including 4 children. The incident took place in the middle of a party in Baltimore, in the northeast of the country's Atlantic coast. The police report confirms that they received an emergency call in the vicinity of the Brooklyn neighborhood. According to local media, more than 100 people gathered to celebrate the neighborhood party when a burst of almost 30 shots was heard, followed by several more. The gun violence file from January to July 1st registered 9,380 people killed by firearms. Police authorities launched an investigation. However, the suspect or suspects are still at large. Also in the United States, the anti-immigrant law known as SB 1778, promoted by Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis, went into effect this Saturday in the so-called Sunshine State. The measure went into effect amid social protests and calls to unite and use the vote to fight what Latino leaders define as an attack from the extreme right. The new law foresees to severely punish undocumented immigrants and those who help them. Different pro-immigrant organizations called a meeting with the objective of defining a plan of action with strategies and concrete objectives against this law and the policies of Governor Ron DeSantis, who aspires to be President of the United States and is already campaigning to be elected as the Republican candidate for the 2024 presidential elections. In France, authorities confirmed more than 700 arrests on Sunday, on the 5th consecutive night of riots following the killing of a 17-year-old teenager by a police officer. The Ministry of the Interior also reported that at least 45 police officers were injured. Paris and Marseille have reported the highest number of incidents due to the extreme situation. The tourist camps have been closed in the middle of the summer season. The mayor of La Haye-les-Roses, Vincent Jabrun, denounced a murder attempt against his family, and Justice Minister Eric Dupont warned that the parents of the young demonstrators could be fined. And on Saturday, family and friends gathered in Nanterre for the funeral of the 17-year-old who was killed by French police. Rituals to bid farewell to the teen who was killed in the Paris suburb began with a viewing of the open coffin by family and friends. Later, at the entrance to a cemetery on a quiet hill, dozens of people from all walks of life stood along the road waiting for the teen's body to arrive. Many of the mourners were from the Muslim community. Rioting and looting raged in cities around France for a fifth night despite a huge police deployment, and on Saturday, over 1,311 arrests were reported. No police were present at the funeral, but there was plenty of security. Also on Saturday in the Netherlands, during an event marking the 150 years since slaves were freed in its former colonies, the Dutch King Willem-Alexander formally apologized for the country's colonial-era involvement in slavery. Thousands of descendants of slaves from the South American nation of Suriname and the Caribbean islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curaçao attended the celebrations in Amsterdam. A Dutch study released in June found that the royal family earned $595 million in today's terms between the years 1675 and 1770 from the colonies, where slavery was widespread. The current king's distant ancestors, William III, William IV, and William V, were among the biggest earners from what the report called the Dutch state's deliberate, structural, and long-term involvement in slavery.
Today, I'm standing here in front of you as your king and as part of the government. Today, I am apologizing personally. I am intensely experiencing this with my heart and soul.
In the context of the celebration, hundreds of Suriname nationals and people from other former Dutch colonies in the Caribbean took to the streets of Amsterdam on Saturday. The director for the Black Archive, Mitchell Esaias, said that an apology would not be enough and should be tied to a form of repair and reparatory justice or reparations. The King's speech follows Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's apology late last year for the country's role in the slave trade. Slavery was abolished in Suriname and the Dutch colonies in the Caribbean on July 1, 1863, but most of the enslaved laborers were forced to continue working on plantations for a further 10 years.
A lot of people, including myself and my group, the Black Archives and the Black Manifesto, said that the apology is not enough. Apologies should be tied to a form of repair and reparatory justice or reparations.
You could forgive them, but you will never forget. It's part of your culture. So yes, of course we have to forgive, because otherwise it will not be good.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, sub-stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the South. Protests intensify in Israel against a reform pushed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. After 26 weeks of continuous protests in Israel, social and citizens organizations announced on Saturday that the protests will be reinforced with events in over 150 localities in the country. Protest organizers call on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hardliners to limit calls for arrest and prosecution against protesters. Demonstrations intensified after Netanyahu's government announced a bill to prevent judges from reviewing the soundness of government decisions. In Kenya, the death toll rose to 52 following a road crash in the western part of the country. Mr. Eric Mutai, governor of Jericho County, where the accident occurred, gave an updated death toll of 52 and said it included 31 men, 18 women, and 2 children. Transport Minister Kipchumba Murkomen said during a visit to the crash site at Londiani Junction that new safety measures would be introduced after what he described as a terrible and painful tragedy. Investigations have been launched to establish the cause of the accident, but authorities urge drivers to be cautious and follow the rules. Footage of the accident's aftermath carried by local broadcasters showed the twisted wreckage of cars and motorbikes alongside damaged minibuses and trucks. On Saturday, a bus accident in western India killed at least 25 people. According to Baburao Mahamuni, Deputy Superintendent of Police of Buldana District, the bus was traveling at high speed when it hit a wall on the highway after suffering a flat tire and the fuel tank exploding, causing a fire. The source said at least 25 of the 33 passengers on the bus died in the accident, which occurred at 2 a.m. on the highway between the cities of Nagpur and Pune. Road accidents are common in India, and officials say around 150,000 people died each year in such incidents. In China, a powerful explosion was reported at a chemical plant in the southeast province of Jiangxi. The incident occurred at around noon local time, and local emergency services were on the scene trying to extinguish the flames. According to preliminary information, no one has been injured and all employees of the factory were evacuated. The pictures taken a few meters from the affected factory shows dense columns of black smoke and flames close to the source of the fire. On Saturday, tens of thousands of South Koreans brought rainbow pride to the streets of Seoul for an annual celebration of LGBTQ rights, while demonstrators against them snagged a prime site marchers had used since 2015. This year's Pride Parade, one of Asia's largest, was denied permission to congregate at the Central Plaza, where the main festivities have traditionally taken place. Instead, an increasingly vocal Christian-led opposition was granted the spot, highlighting the struggles South Korea's campaigners for LGBTQ rights face. The heat, humidity, and backlash still did not deter supporters from thronging to Seoul's queer parade, which organizers estimated drew a crowd of around 50,000 people. Chief organizer Jang Sung-woo said there is no public forum to disclose one's true identity elsewhere except for the Pride Parade, and that's why so many people gather in solidarity.
The reason why it's important to have the parade in the city center is because if people don't see LGBTQ people in the city, they think there are none around me. There is already a big sexual minority in Korean society, but there is no public forum to disclose one's true identity elsewhere except for the Pride Parade, and that's why so many people are here today in solidarity.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.